Hey there, welcome to my channel. My name is Katarina Berry. I'm so happy to have you here. Whew, this video is something I've been getting around to making for what feels like over a year. It is a difficult video for me to make because I want to talk about a period of my life that in many ways has broken me, in many ways has tested me, in many ways has set me free. But it was nonetheless a very difficult period of time in my life, and I like to call it the dark night of the soul. You may have heard that phrase before, or you may have not, but it refers to a time that can happen to, and happens to most people, when your entire scope of how you see yourself, what you understand your life to be, your direction, your sense of who you are, all becomes very challenged. Often people that experience the dark night of the soul, it tests their will to live. Even it really pushes someone to get to the bottom of who they are and why they're here. And it's extremely difficult to go through. However, it can also be something that truly liberates you from the past, from the lies, from the false beliefs that you had. It's a transformative period of time. It's usually when we find ourselves again. But before that happens, you have to deal with the events that comprise the dark night of the soul. So I just want to share my experience because I feel like there are people out there who may be going through something like this. I also feel that it's important to sometimes hear another person's perspective and to kind of have that confirmation that there's something at the end of this. There's something at the end of that dark tunnel that the dark night of the soul can be. So if you are currently going through a period that you would define as the dark night of the soul, I want to wish you courage. I want to wish you strength, and I want to wish you fierce, unstoppable, unconditional self-love as you go through this. But without further ado, let's jump into my story. The events that my dark night of the soul was made up of were 9 different things that happened. I'm going to go through all of them, and I guess we'll break them up into chapters. So let's start with chapter 1. So chapter 1 is something that was maybe the most traumatic event of my whole life to that point. So what happened was I lost someone I loved, and I lost someone I loved to an overdose. Now, this really truly launched the dark night of the soul for me because it was the person that I had what felt like a soul connection with. And he also was a drug addict, and admittedly so, he was trying to, I guess, help himself in the way he could. He was trying to fight that addiction, but it was not promising. Even he did not really believe that he could win. So right when I met him, I knew that about him, and I had a feeling that he's probably not going to be around for much longer. But I chose to love him anyway. I chose to love him 100%, as if on one side there would be no tomorrow, and on the other side there would be forever for us. So that's what I chose very consciously. But when he did pass away, it coincided with me having a premonition in a dream of him dying, and I conveyed that to him. I communicated that to him. I called him, and he did not take it. He did not take it very seriously because he was like, well, nothing's happening, so I'm good. Unfortunately, that night he overdosed and died. And I think to me the most traumatic was not only the loss of someone I loved, but also the fact that I was given some insight and that I didn't manage to do anything with it that would stop the event. So I will be making another video about seeing the future that I did not want to see, because it happened definitely more than a few times in my life. But um, the 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 bottom line is that the death of my significant other, as well as that premonition that I had about his death, it sent me into a time of great, deep, desperate depression. So for a few months, I was just in and out of what seemed like consciousness. Sometimes I remember sitting there like completely just out of it. I wasn't sure who I am, where I am, what I'm doing. Like none of that mattered. I was just kind of there. It was a very hard time. So I've obviously it's been about 4 years. No, it's been almost 5 years at this point. It's been almost 5 years at this point since this happened. So there's some distance between my feelings then and my feelings now, obviously. But at the time, even connecting to that state now, it was just complete desperation. Now, Ryan's death was the first chapter of my dark night of the soul. I do not think it's anyone's fault that he passed away. I do not blame him. I learned not to blame myself, because I did the one thing that I could with that premonition, is tell him about it. And I respected his boundaries and his personal space enough not to like barge in on him, or, go over there when he says everything's fine. So I've learned to forgive myself since, but at the time, neither of the things were possible. I could not stop the pain. I could not stop the feeling of absolute devastation, and I couldn't stop the guilt of not being able to do anything, even though I had an insight that most people, I guess, don't have. So that was just the beginning. The next chapter, the second chapter of my dark night of the soul, happened a few months later, as I was slowly recovering from that loss, as I was beginning to feel myself again a little bit, beginning to exercise again, beginning to eat healthy, to just take care of my body, because before that was a struggle. And I was starting to see friends again, and kind of becoming a little more social, because for a while I couldn't really talk to anyone but the mother of the guy that I loved and lost. So we forged a very close bond. I've come to see her several times since his passing. And I felt like, even though my life was kind of beginning to feel a little more normal again, still she was the only person that I really could talk to. Like every other conversation was kind of like a run through pleasantries, oh, hey, what's up? How is it going? And I felt like, even though I was becoming capable of that small talk again, I couldn't really tell people what was going on. And most of my friends knew, most of my small community knew what was happening to me, or what happened. So they weren't really trying, they weren't trying to avoid me, but they weren't trying to talk about this, because you don't know how to talk about this with someone who lost someone. And I could understand that, but my boyfriend's mother was just so kind, so compassionate, so amazing, so understanding. Of course, she also missed her son terribly, and there was nothing else that she wanted to talk about, really, and neither did I. So we spent a lot of time on the phone. We spent a lot of time together, a lot more than I guess I normally would. And I visited them in another state. I live in the United States, so it was quite a drive, but I went a handful of times, and it was painful, but it was also necessary for me and for the family. So the second chapter, unfortunately, of the Dark Night of the Soul is that my boyfriend's mother took her own life in a few months after he passed away. And so it was extremely devastating to me. I can't even imagine what it was like for the family, even though I continued to stay in contact with them for a little while longer after that. But to go to a church and to witness a funeral of someone you love, and then witness a funeral of that person's mother, like month later, is just excruciating and really sad. Like I said, there is some distance between me and the feelings I had at the time, but still, I missed them both for a while after that, so much. And it felt like all of a sudden, it didn't feel like it was about me, but all of a sudden I realized, like, this is something's going on. Like, I'm in a place in my life where something's going on. I felt like, what, like, how can this be? How can this happen and then this happen, and what's gonna happen next? And I was just scared, afraid. I was, again, as a spiritual person who spends a lot of time doing spiritual activities, seeking new spiritual understandings, this bond that I had with my significant other and his mom was so strong that I could feel their presence, and yet they were both gone, and I was still in this world. And because of my connection to my boyfriend's mother and her being the only person I could talk to for quite some time, I felt like I was the only one here. Like, they were both somewhere else, and why was I not with them? And so, although I didn't have any thoughts of hurting myself, I was beginning to wonder. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, is there a purpose? Is there a reason? Because this day-to-day existence, this stuff that I'm doing, it's all pointless, it's all meaningless when someone you love so much is gone, and then someone you also love so much is also gone. And so I had a lot of these kind of bizarre moments where it seemed like there were two realities. Like, in one reality, I was here, and in another reality, I was not. And there were times where sometimes I felt like they were here with me, like in this reality, and I could, like, almost hear them or see them, but then they're not. And then I had these, I was very confused. I felt like I didn't know where I was. I was very disoriented. And even though I was spending most of my time at home, sometimes I would genuinely feel like I don't know where I am, and I don't know, like, who I am. And so it was very disturbing. That was chapter 2. There are 7 more chapters to this dark night of the soul. So I guess we're ready to get into chapter 3. But before we do, I'm gonna say that after the death of my significant other and before his mother took her own life, I found a job, and I was really excited about it, actually. I mean, I wasn't really excited about it because I was still extremely depressed, but it really took my mind off of things. I was doing kind of some freelance work prior to that, and then I found this job. And so it was kind of the highlight, because even though I couldn't really feel the excitement that I normally would, it took my mind off things and it gave me something to do. So whenever I went to work, it's like these things were kind of muted a little bit. It's like whenever I went to work, these events were kind of like separate from me. It's like I could be a very focused self at work, and it's almost like I could put my emotions aside and forget about them for a little while and just focus. So I appreciated that, because it helped me I think emerge out of my cocoon and emerge out of my suffering, and it gave me something to look forward to. So that update will be significant later on, but for now we're going into chapter 3. So chapter 3 is, I broke my arm in Mexico. it was my first adult vacation, really by myself. After all the things that have happened and with this new job that I was really dedicated to, I decided I need to get away from things. I need to get out. I need to go somewhere, do something fun by myself. I need to be with me, but in a different sense, like an adventure. Now, I'm adventurous by nature. I like traveling alone, so this wasn't really like out of character. It was just a big step because I paid for the vacation myself. It was like an adult thing to do. I was turning 23. I was going to Mexico. It was exciting. At the time, I felt like I could really get out of my head, get away from, create some distance with these events. And at the time, I've been at that job for 6 months, so I was like, okay, well, I maybe changing up the scenery could be interesting, could be inspiring. So I was just ready for something like that. So I went to Mexico and to an adults only resort, so no kids, just a bunch of couples mostly. A couple did try to hit on me the first night. I was like, you guys are cute, but I'm just here to, do my own thing. They're like, you're good. So that was kind of the environment there. It was a Groupon deal. So I spent about less than I think right around $1,000, like maybe $1,200 for the entire vacation. Plane tickets included, everything all inclusive, drinks included, food, everything. And it was like 5-day getaway. So it was great. And so right as I got there, like I said, there was this couple and I had a few drinks and I had a dinner and it was nice and I wore some nice clothes and I took a bunch of selfies. I'm like, last days of being 22. So then the next day, the second day, the day before my birthday, I went parasailing, nothing happened. I had a few drinks on the beach, did some topless dancing because everyone was topless and I was like, what the hell? So I did that and nothing happened, everything's good. And then I went to dinner and at night and did not actually drink. I was planning on doing that later, but I just wanted to have a nice meal. And I did that, and then I was going back to my room, and I fell from the stairs, and something was off. I was like, something feels strange, because I didn't really feel any pain. The stairs that I fell kind of tumbled a little bit down. It was like a big set of stairs and very wide, so it's almost like a hallway that's a staircase. And all the stairs were carpeted, so it wasn't like it was like I fell on hard marble or something. No, it was kind of soft actually, but something was off. It's like I didn't feel any pain, but just getting up from that fall, I was like, something feels strange. So I look back because I'm like trying to get up, and because I couldn't really move my arm the normal way for some reason, and I look back, and you see where that scar is. That's where my arm was bent backwards. So I'm like, oh my God, I just broke my arm. And in the moment of shock, I'm very grateful that I did that. I grabbed the arm, which was laying behind me, twisted backwards, and I grabbed it and I pulled it and held it like this. And if I had not done that, it would be impossible to do in seconds because the pain started kicking in and the shock was wearing off, and I was really grossed out by what I saw, just like the position of and so if I didn't do that just in that moment, it would be impossible to do. So it was easier obviously to transport me because I had my arm like, I was holding it so tight. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want it to fall off or get completely damaged. Anyway, so it was very stressful, but it was interesting actually, because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how I was going to get treated. I didn't know who was going to work on my arm or how I was going to get back home or what was going to happen to the rest of my vacation. And in that moment, it's strange, but I felt a sense of being very comforted. It sounds bizarre, but I did. It was like the unknown was so comforting because there was nothing for me to do. All I had to do was just observe and be. There was nothing I could do. There was nothing I could decide or change and it felt so liberating for some reason. It was like a release. It was a feeling of just being at peace. And I was not acting like that because I was trying to get people's attention. I was trying to get them to do something. I was like, hey, look, my arm broken, and then I felt like they were like, that's fine. And then I started I was like, it hurts. So I was trying to get people to react to me and do something and help me. But inside, I felt peace. I felt surrender. I felt like it's whatever will be, will be. And it was such a relief. So what ended up happening is very stressful, actually. They took me to this private hospital. They wouldn't operate on me until they received a $25,000 payment for the surgery, which is, of course, a very American kind of price, obviously. And I did have insurance at work, but it would only cover things after they have been done, especially when it came to international stuff, apparently. So anyway, so my parents had to find $25,000, which they did not have, neither did I. So they had to borrow and take it from different places. And then after a while, when my insurance kicked in, it was paid back. But still, just receiving a phone call, hey, your daughter is in Mexico with a broken arm, we need $25,000, is a little strange. So they were extremely stressed out. I felt really terrible for causing them that because, I definitely didn't want to bother anyone. And I definitely didn't foresee, going on a vacation by myself for around $1,000 and then having to pay 25 times that to fix the broken arm. So anyway, so the money was found. They wouldn't give me water or food or anything because they were like, well, as soon as we get the payment, we need to operate, which, was close to maybe about 12 to 15 hours before the payment could get to that place. So I was extremely thirsty. They did give me some sedatives, so for the pain, so I wasn't so much in pain, but I was very worried, very scared. At the same time, I was like, well, whatever happens, happens. So very strange state. But as that got kind of into motion, my arm was operated on right there. There's a metal plate in there that I can take out one day if I want to, but I don't think I want to make the scar even worse. But this arm is bigger than this arm a little bit because there is that plate. So anyway, I have a souvenir from Mexico. I did end up going to Chichen Itza after the surgery because I already bought tickets, and it was the one thing I could actually enjoy after spending most of my vacation in the hospital, spending my birthday in the hospital. And so I did go. It was a bus tour, so it was easy. I mean, I had some pills for my pain, and then the surgery was done, so it wasn't like a cast. And so they were like, well, as long as it doesn't get wet, you're good. So I was like, okay, I'll go explore some Mayan ruins. But that was chapter 3 of The Dark Night of the Soul. Now we're going into chapter number 4. Now chapter 4 is being in a terrible car accident. So as I came back from Mexico, I leased a car. I leased a brand new Cadillac for my work. I was doing advertising, sales, working for a local branch of a major corporation in my area. And so I wanted the looks. Also, my old car just completely gave in and was done. And I've been driving it since high school. So I was like, yeah, time for something new. And so I leased a brand new Cadillac. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. It was just really great. I loved it, not as much as I loved my old Honda 1998 minivan, which is what I drove since high school. It was just it's a car that's associated with so many memories, but I liked the Cadillac. And so I came back from Mexico with a broken arm. It took some time to heal, but I was back to work the same week because I was really kind of driven. And I had a promotion, which is also going to be an interesting factor later on. I had a promotion where I was promoted to report directly to a director in the company versus a manager. So before I had a manager, and then I was not promoted to a manager, I was just promoted to a new kind of assignment. But my boss became the director of the whole department. So um, at the time I was really excited. I was like, oh my gosh, that means something special. That's gonna be great. So I had this brand new Cadillac, I had this promotion, my arm was healing up, and things were kind of moving along. And then I was in a car crash, maybe a month, 2 months after the arm break. I was, it was in August, so about 2 months after that, after I broke my arm in Mexico, I was driving my brand new Cadillac. It was after hours, but I still had some work assignments to do, so I was technically at work, wearing work clothes and stuff with like the branding and logos and stuff. And so then I was just taking a turn and took a turn, and I normally would be fine because I was assuming that the car that was kind of like driving my way saw me, and it felt like I was gonna make it, but I wasn't. I was so I was making a turn like this, and there was traffic going like that. So I got T-boned. That was my car T-boned right into my driver's seat. As I saw that about to happen, as I was like, as my car was moving slowly across, and this car was like speeding right up, and I could tell, like I looked, and I'm like, is the driver not seeing me? And no, she was on her phone, and I was like, there's no way she's gonna see me. She's not gonna slow down. In fact, her car was accelerating, so she was moving faster and faster, and my car was just slow because I was making a turn. So right as that was about to happen, I had this moment where I was like, I'm gonna die. There's no way I'm gonna survive this. Like it's gonna hit me, like me. And in that moment, I knew I only had like about a second left, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. And I let it all go. I don't know how to describe this to you, but it wasn't like my life was flashing before my eyes, but it kind of was, except I wasn't really trying to hold on to anything. I was just, okay, if it's my time, then okay, sure. I'm as ready as I will ever be, I guess. And I just accepted it, and I let myself go. I swear there was this feeling of like me kind of getting ready to leave. Maybe my soul, maybe my spirit, whatever you want to call that. But it was this feeling like I'm waiting to be gone. But nothing happened. I got T-boned, and the Cadillac exploded in a bunch of airbags from everywhere, like windows, panels, doors, handles, everything. It was all one big giant airbag with a bunch of little airbags. So I was completely unharmed. I had a tiny little bruise on my knee from the door being pushed in, but everything else was fine. And so everyone showed up to the scene, and then my co-workers are like, oh my gosh, are you okay? You were on the way to meet us. They're like, okay, we're taking off for drinks. And then I had a bunch of drinks, and it was like, oh my gosh, you were just in a car accident. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm still here, and let's have drinks and stuff. And then at home the next day, I was planning on going to work, but then when I woke up, I was like, there's no way I'm going to work. I was so depressed. I was distraught. I could not believe what happened, and I kept wondering, like, what is wrong with me? Like, I made it, I survived, I'm unharmed. What's wrong with me? Like, why am I like this? And then it hit me that I was disappointed that I didn't die, because I let it all go and I was so ready, and then life just continues. So it bothered me. I was like, what was this moment for? And what bothered me more was how sad, how this melancholy depression, like this deep sadness kick in, like, why not? And I was like, wait, what? I accepted it, but do I want to die? Like, I don't want to die. I never thought I'd be like this. Like, I'm not like this. I love life. I'm a happy person. Then I was like, am I though? What's the point of all this? And so it brought me back to that place of my significant other and his mom passing away, and me feeling like I'm the only one left. Even though I have loving parents, great family, and lots of friends, that feeling resurfaced. And this time it was disappointment that this accident happened. And I was there, I was ready, I let it all go, and I didn't. And I couldn't believe. I couldn't process the feeling, because I knew what I was feeling, but I couldn't believe that I would feel like this. I'm like, why am I disappointed that I'm alive? Like, how it was so wrong. I was like, something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me. And so I was just very disturbed by this. So that was chapter 4. Chapter 5. The job situation. I lost my job is what chapter 5 is. But the situation at work became extremely toxic. The person that I was reporting to, my direct supervisor, who was the director of the entire department, was an extremely abusive, gaslighting, manipulative, psychologically, just psychologically manipulative and psychologically abusive person. He never did anything pertaining to like sexual harassment or anything like inappropriate like that. But he caused me a lot of psychological damage because he put me in an impossible situation. He made me feel like I was losing my mind. He put me in competition with all of my colleagues, which is actually against the company policies. And I was the only one who was competing with everyone else. At the same time, I had very little to start with. He didn't really give me any significant, like it wasn't anything significant, and it was something that also had impossible goals, like literally. A few times I even asked people outside of my company, I'm like, okay, my boss keeps telling me this is totally doable, but like, do you think I'm crazy? Because I think this is impossible. And they would look, I can't give you the details or the name of the company of like what I'm talking about specifically, but it was sales related, sales goals. And they would be like, that's physically impossible, because there was something physical associated with the sales I was doing. Even though I was doing like advertising, marketing, there was a physical component to it. Again, can't really get into the details, but if I was to meet the goals that I had set, which were impossible, there would be no way that all the clients could get that physical component. No way. So it was impossible. And I would just ask him, I'm like, am I losing my mind? Because my boss, my supervisor keeps telling me like, you're not working, you shouldn't be working harder, you should be working smarter. He always had like things like that to say, like, maybe you're doing the wrong thing, maybe you're focusing maybe you're in your head too much, maybe you need to get out of your head, maybe you need to get out of your own way, like things like that would just go like, what do you mean? Like, I'm asking you for like, what do you mean? Like, what does that mean? And it made me feel so stupid, and it made me feel so crazy, and I would I cried a few times like in his office, and of course he'd be like, you need to get a handle on your emotions. And I would be like, I don't know how, like, I'm losing my mind. So the promotion that I ended up getting with this new boss, it was in fact a demotion, because I started making a lot less money. My bonuses were taken away. Everything was taken away. I was competing with all of my coworkers, so I couldn't talk to anyone, because they're like, well, shouldn't you mind your own business? You're in direct competition with me, which creates a hostile environment. The gaslighting was beyond. There was no, he would like get out of the meetings with me. We'd have a meeting scheduled, and he'd like weasel out of the office so he wouldn't have to deal with me. There was some shady stuff going on, the numbers moving around or I don't know what it was, but that whole project served some purpose, and there was some reason that I was so isolated, so I couldn't really communicate what was going on to anyone. Other managers, that was their boss. So when I went to other managers, they're like, that's my boss too. So like, I'm sorry, I can't really do anything for you. Finally, being an HR major, as I was in technical school, I was like, okay, let me go to HR because they can't really share it with this guy. It's gotten really bad. It's only getting worse. Let me just try it because that should be confidential. Well, I went to the HR director and talked to the HR director, and the next day, my boss called me into his office and said, so I heard you went and talked to the HR director. And I said, that's supposed to be confidential. He said, well, our company is a little bit different. And so obviously, so he knew everything. So after that incident with HR and everything else, I knew where it was headed kind of, but I was really trying to do my best and make it work. And I felt like, I don't know, I constantly felt like I could have done better. And I kept trying to do better, even though I knew the situation was like, you can't win. I still felt like there were clients, there were projects, there were elements that wouldn't be the same without me. I wanted to contribute something. I kept fighting. Stupidly, too long. Should have left, but it got to the point where they just cut the project. It was no longer, they could no longer kind of play pretend or like whatever stories they were making up about it. So I lost my job right before New Year's. I was just called into the office and let go of, and I wasn't fired. I was just laid off because of the end of the project. So that was favorable, I guess, but I was just destroyed by the time it ended. I had nothing left in me, no fight, no nothing. I was just so sad, and I was sad that I did my best, and I felt like a failure, honestly. Even though the situation was set up to fail, I felt like a failure. I took it personally. I was like, okay, I'm a failure. Screw all these people. I screwed up. That's my fault. I screwed up. I'm a failure. The reason this project failed is because of me. The reason it wasn't working was because of me. I should have done things better. I should have done a better job. I like all that stuff. So that was chapter 5. Moving on to chapter 6. So chapter 6 was the panic attacks that started following my job loss. I went to Russia, which is where I'm originally from, and I went there to visit my family for New Year's right after I lost my job, and there was a lot of shame associated with it. I didn't know how to tell people. I didn't know how to tell people about my boyfriend passing away because I haven't been to Russia since that happened. So a lot of family, friends, members knew what happened, but I've never really had a chance to tell them about it. So I was having anxiety about having to explain that. I was having anxiety about having to explain why I no longer have a job. There was a lot that happened, and I just didn't want to tell these stories because they were really sad stories to tell. So as I spent some time in Russia, I started kind of nurturing this idea of, ooh, I kind of want to start my own business. You know, one day it would be nice to be able to start my own business. Maybe now. Maybe I should start my own business now. Maybe I can do a better job than this company by actually offering people something of value and doing right by them. Oh, by the way, that was part of me losing a job too, is the fact that whatever I was selling was not working for people. So I felt terrible selling what I was selling. And also when they said it wasn't working, when I communicated that to my boss, he would tell me to focus on new sales and don't worry about them people. So that was I felt like it was kind of something I took on my own karma. So it's like, let me start my own business. I'm going to fix that karma. I'm going to do right by people. I'm going to do a better job. I'm qualified. I have skills. I tried really hard. I learned a lot of new things on this job. Let me try doing this on my own. Let me try opening my business. So I was contemplating these thoughts while in Russia. I even brought like a business plans for dummies book with me, trying to kind of create a business plan. But I had these raging panic attacks where one time with my best friend, I was telling her about some of the events, and I just had this intense really intense panic attack where I couldn't breathe. I was just so distraught. I was crying. I was sobbing. She was like, I've never seen you like this. This is really, really hard for me to see. I'm really worried about you. I think you should start seeking some help because this is scaring me. So these continued. And I would get to the point where I would have this vision for my business, and then I would get to the point where I would just sob and just have this like sense of utter just discouragement and desperation. And I would think, I'm never gonna be able to do this. I'm a failure. I failed a project. I failed all these people. I failed all these businesses. I sold them crap that wasn't working. I'm such a failure. I'm gonna fail before I even start a business. I'm never gonna be able to start a business. So that self-deprecation didn't help, but it was part of that chapter, that panic attack chapter. And so my stay in Russia had quite a few of those panic attacks, and I was in a dark place. I was even some of my friends could tell that I was not how I was different. And it wasn't like it's not like I changed as a person. It's like I was in this really dark place, and people could pick up on that, and they were all worried. And I think a lot of people were more worried than they showed, but I did not feel right. I was like, I constantly had this feeling that something's wrong with me. We're moving on to chapter 7. Chapter 7 is when I broke my leg. Now, I'm not gonna pull my leg up right now, but my leg has a big bowl of metal in there that is a replacement for an ankle. It has 2 sides like with screws. I was walking down a straight line, pretty much street, just a street, paved street in Charleston, which is where my parents live. And I was just, after my return from Russia, no job, still contemplating starting a business, but still having panic attacks. You know, I had this point where I was like, I'll work for my mom. She has a business of her own, and she sells art. So I was like, I'll sell art for a while. So she had an opening for me. So I was very grateful, and I was doing that, and I was not sure what I was going to do next. But then I was just walking across the street to get myself like a coffee or something at this place, this historic Charleston City Market. And it's kind of like open, out in the open. And so I just walked away from the booth and asked someone to watch it and went to get myself a drink or something like that. And I fell. And I fell, as I fell, I heard a crack. And it was like, I still hear it. Like it was my bone. I felt it. I felt it and I heard it, and it was just so disturbing. But when I sat up, my foot was like hanging out of my leg. It was not, there was no blood, but it was like it just, and I was like, okay, now I can't walk. Great, awesome, perfect, wow, amazing. I had cigarettes with me. I was gonna light, at the time I was still smoking cigarettes, I was gonna light up. And this person ran into me, took my cigarette away, said, no, don't smoke, the ambulance is on the way. And I was like, dude, do you see my leg? What, like, don't, like, no, I want my cigarette. He was like, no, let's wait for the ambulance, they'll give you the medicine. And I'm like, what the hell? I couldn't even get up. I couldn't even smoke a cigarette. Anyway, so I felt terrible. So after surgery, I was told that I'm gonna have to stay with my parents for at least a month and a half. And because I can't take care of myself, I can't walk. So I moved back in with my parents. I had to give up my apartment in another town, in another city. And it was terrible. I hated it. Not being able to move. I love my parents, but it was a very difficult situation, environment to be in, because it was just hard. I didn't want to, I was like, why am I living with my parents? You know, I hated being helpless. I was very hateful towards my body because I was gaining weight, because I wasn't able to move as much. And I was angry because my arm broke, my leg broke. That car accident, I was just upset. I was not on good terms with my body. And I was really desperate. I had very dark moments during that time, very, very dark. I don't really like to go there, but I had a lot of things psychologically come up that I needed to release, some really, really dark thoughts, some really, really hateful intentions towards the world and other people. And I was just at the bottom of the pit in that place. So I stayed there for about 2 months, and that's not the end. So the two next chapters touch on that state while I was with a broken leg. So the last two chapters, I'm gonna actually tell it as one story, because chapters 8 and 9, while I was there with a broken leg, living with my parents, two things happened. I saw another premonition at the time I was seeing someone of my boyfriend cheating on me, which ended up being true, and it happened as I was seeing it. So I had a dream at night with this premonition. The next day I asked him about it, like, oh, hey, I had this crazy dream. And he said, oh, that's so crazy, but I'm sorry, it actually happened. I'm glad that he owned up to it though, but it was very betraying. And I also started having a lot of conflicts with my mother, because something began revealing itself in this process. Something started emerging. My spirituality, my fascination with purpose started emerging. I started reading books. I started reading tarot cards. I started just all of a sudden, it was like a gate opened, and all this inspiration was pouring in, and replacing the depression, replacing the disappointment, replacing the I don't want to live anymore, replacing with something like, no, that's why I'm here. That's what I came here to do. That's part of my path. That's my why. I don't know how, but it is. So I was getting very deep into spirituality. Now, my mom's spirituality is very different than mine. She's very Christian. She's very kind of strict. So while there, living with my parents and recovering from this injury to my leg, I had another premonition, psychic vision of my boyfriend cheating on me. And it wasn't a very serious relationship, but it still hurt me. And then I had this terrible series of fights with my mother, who told me pretty much that you're going to hell, you're a witch, that's evil, that's devil's work, things like that. And I couldn't even like walk out of the house. I was there with a broken leg. I couldn't even get up and leave. And it was very, very trying to be like that. It was very challenging to be in that state, to be like that. And it was really hard. I just, I don't know how I made it through that period, but that was the last little bit of it, because this cheating and this terrible kind of like almost, I don't know, these run-ins with my mother that were so hurtful, because I felt like I can't follow my path, the thing that's pulling me out of the darkness, the thing that's pulling me into my purpose, the thing that's giving me a reason to be alive again, is never going to be accepted. So what if I choose a spiritual path? So what if I start a tarot practice eventually? So what if I go to the shamans and do ceremonies with them? Does that mean that my parent will never accept me? At the time I felt like that. Now our relationship is a lot better. But at the time I was very, very upset by that, very hurt. So with these two last draws, I made it through. I kept reading the spiritual books. I kept reading tarot cards. No matter what, I kept doing it. A few months later, I opened my business. For the past 3 years, I've been doing marketing on my own. I did not necessarily, it was not the right industry for me, perhaps, but I did end up fixing some of what felt like relationships with the clients that I had in that company before that I sold them something that didn't work. I felt like I made up for it. I felt like I really made up for that. They became my clients, and I did really well by them. And then, you know, as these 3 years went on, I realized that marketing doesn't bring me any joy. It doesn't. I'm not really successful in it. It's not really my passion. It's something I have to work really hard on, and not that hard work is bad, but it's something that's also joyless. So it's hard and joyless and kind of empty. So for me, now I know a lot of great marketing professionals that are that is their purpose. They're in the right line of business, but that wasn't right for me. And just recently, I changed the name of my company and started a psychic divination business, which is reading tarot and oracle cards for people. And I look forward to expanding in many directions with that. So I made a video about how I started my tarot practice, how I started reading cards, and how I turned that into business. It's going to be linked here, also in the description to this video. So I mentioned the dark night of the soul in that video, and I feel like it's a very integral part of understanding my story and how I got to where I am now, doing what I love and feeling aligned and balanced. It wasn't always like that, and in fact, I don't think I would have discovered that spiritual path and allowed it to pull me out of my misery, to pull me out of my senseless kind of I don't want to live anymore state, you know? But that dark night of the soul, it was difficult. Now, why do things like that happen? Why does a dark night of the soul happen occasionally in our life? Because it tears away that which is not true. It tears away that which is not complementary to who you are. It tears away the lies. It tears away the wrong directions. It tears away things that are needed that need to be torn down so that we can be vulnerable again, so that we can feel again, so that we can feel that voice, of the true self, the soul, the essence within, guiding you towards the next step, guiding you towards what is true, guiding you towards what is you. And it's one of the most difficult things, and this was the most difficult period of my life to this point, but I'm grateful. I am deeply grateful for the lessons that I learned, for the wisdom that I gained, and for the person that I've become, and what I was able to do following that period of time. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for listening. If you are currently going through something like the dark night of the soul, drop a comment. Let's talk about this. You're not alone in this. Know that. If you've been through something like this, if you care to share your experience, please do. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm very grateful for your presence and participation and the contribution of your energy through your attention. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.